They stole my startup idea and made millions. But then I showed the world the patent in my name. For most of my life, I was the kind of person people looked past. Not out of cruelty, but out of convenience. I wasn't loud. I wasn't rich. I didn't come from a city. My shirt was always a little wrinkled, my shoes scuffed, my dreams too big for the small places I came from. I grew up in a dusty village where ambition was considered a luxury and failure was part of daily routine. My father, a kind man with sunburned skin and calloused hands, was a farmer all his life. He worked from dawn to dusk, sowing seeds in faith and reaping disappointment. Year after year, we watched harvests go to waste, either because of poor weather or worse, greedy middlemen who paid us pennies while making thousands in profit. I still remember that one night, I was 13, sitting beside him on our broken Sharpie. He had just returned from the Mandi, his shirt soaked in sweat, his voice tired. I asked him, "Abu, why don't we sell directly to people? Why do we need those men?" He smiled sadly and said, "Because they built the bridge. And we were never taught how." That line burrowed into my soul. From that moment, I swore I would build that bridge. I was always obsessed with machines and computers. I taught myself coding on a borrowed laptop in college, stayed in libraries long after they closed, and interned at companies that didn't even pay me. While others were taking jobs abroad or marrying into stable futures, I was living on dry roti and expired coffee sachets, scribbling algorithms and UI sketches into tattered notebooks. But finally, something clicked. I called it Christianet. It was a platform that could connect local farmers directly with institutional buyers, restaurants, wholesalers, grocery chains, eliminating middlemen. It used AI to predict pricing, logistics routing, even demand spikes. Simple interface. Voice-based support in regional languages. Geofencing for local delivery zones. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. I piloted it quietly in my district. 10 farmers signed up, then 20. A local restaurant started buying directly through the app. Then a hostel. Farmers began earning double, triple in some cases. I didn't make a single rupee, but for the first time, I felt rich. Rich with purpose. But there was one problem. I had no capital, no business background, no network, just code, hope, and a heart full of fire. That's when I reached out to two people I had once called family, Sahir and Zoya. They were my closest friends from engineering college, or so I thought. We had spent sleepless nights working on silly college projects together, and even once vowed that if one of us made it big, we'd take the others with us. Sahir was now working in venture capital, recently returned from Singapore with a flashy car and an ego even flashier. Zoya had started her own digital branding agency in Mumbai. She was smart, stylish, and knew how to make anything look like gold. When I messaged them, I wasn't asking for a handout, just a shot. They invited me to meet in a sleek cafe in the city, all marble and glass, the kind where a single cup of tea cost more than my weekly groceries. I was nervous, underdressed, overwhelmed, but determined. I pitched Christianet with everything I had. I showed them the working prototype, the pilot results, the potential market. I spoke of the farmers, real people, not just target users. I told them about my father, how this could finally give power back to the hands that actually tilled the soil. Zoya teared up. Sahir leaned back and said, "Bro, this could be big. Really big." They agreed to help. Not just help, they wanted to partner. Sahir said he'd fund the startup, get us in front of the right investors. Zoya promised to take care of the branding, the public pitch, the social media presence. "You just focus on the tech," she said. "Let us handle the rest." I felt like my prayers had been answered. We decided we'd be co-founders, equal partners, a proper firm, a real startup. Sahir insisted that for legal reasons, we'd register the company in his name. Just for now, to get things moving. "We'll fix it later." Zoya nodded. "It's just a formality." "You trust us, right?" Of course I did. We moved fast. I shifted into their office, a small, windowless room next to Zoya's marketing studio. I slept on the floor for months, surviving on instant noodles and chai. I coded 12 hours a day, every single line written by me. I redesigned the UI, rewrote the backend to handle scale, integrated payment APIs, even created an algorithm to adjust prices dynamically based on weather forecasts. Zoya built the buzz. She ran social media campaigns, told our story to journalists. Except, something started to feel strange. I was never mentioned. Whenever press releases went out, they referred to Christianet as a visionary project by Sahir and Zoya. I confronted them once, and Sahir laughed it off. You're the genius behind it all, but investors need shiny names. It's just optics. Zoya smiled. We'll fix it once funding comes in. Trust the process. So I did. Until the day everything fell apart. The morning everything changed didn't feel any different. It started with a routine laptop on, code compiling, coffee barely warm. I had just finished debugging a new logistics module that would make delivery tracking 30% faster. I was proud. I sent the update to Sahir and Zoya on our shared Slack channel. No response. I figured they were busy. Investors, meetings, branding, they had their own worlds. I kept working. I always did. By evening, I stepped out of the office to get some air. That's when I saw something strange. Zoya's office was locked. Dark. Empty. That had never happened before. Her assistant usually stayed until late, and the reception desk was always buzzing. But that day, silence. I called her. No answer. I called Sahir. Straight to voicemail. I messaged on WhatsApp. Blue ticks. No reply. I went back inside, a gnawing feeling in my chest. Something was wrong. The next day, the locks had changed. Literally. I reached the office with my laptop bag in hand, and my keycard didn't work. Confused, I knocked. The security guard, who'd always greeted me with a smile, looked away. Sir, they said you don't work here anymore. My throat went dry. What do you mean? I'm the co-founder. He shrugged. I just follow orders. The company shifted. They've moved to a new office in Lower Parel. Very fancy. I stood there in yesterday's clothes, holding a laptop full of code I had poured my soul into, and realized they were gone. Just like that. They hadn't ghosted me. They had erased me. I rushed home, heart pounding. Opened my laptop, checked the server. Access denied. All admin credentials had been reset. The GitHub repository, locked out. The domain registration, transferred. My email, suspended. Everything was gone. Every line of code. Every design. Every database I had created. Every sleepless night, all hijacked. In panic, I searched online. And there it was. Meet the founders of Agronova, the revolutionary startup empowering farmers across India. Front page article. Big picture. Sahir and Zoya standing like royalty, arms folded, smiling. And below them? My platform. Christianet, renamed Agronova. Same UI, same structure, same concept. The tagline even matched what I had once scribbled in my notebook. Cutting out the middleman, connecting hearts to harvests. They hadn't even changed the slogan. They had taken everything. The article credited Sahir as the visionary tech architect and Zoya as the strategic genius behind the platform. Not one mention of me. The only thing remotely truthful was a throwaway line, built with the help of a small early-stage team. That small team was me. Just me. I sat there in my room, lights off, screen glowing, and felt something break inside. I wasn't just betrayed. I was robbed. They hadn't just stolen an idea. They had stolen my identity. Everything I had been working toward. They had taken and packaged into a glossy, investor-friendly dream and sold it. Millions were pouring in. Seed funding from top firms. Media coverage. Interviews. Awards. The government was even considering them for rural tech partnerships. And I was nothing again. Invisible. My phone rang. It was my father. He still believed I was busy building something big. He always called once a week, never asking for anything, just proud. I couldn't even answer. How could I tell him his son was nothing but a discarded tool? For 3 days, I didn't eat. I stared at my screen, refreshing their news every hour, watching them ride on the wings I had built. I kept hearing Sahir's voice in my head. We'll fix it later. Zoya's smile. You trust us, right? Trust. They had torn out my heart and sold it to the highest bidder. But then something shifted. On the fourth day, I stopped crying and started planning. I didn't sleep for days. Not because I couldn't, but because my mind wouldn't let me. It replayed every moment like a horror reel. Sahir patting my back, Zoya calling me our tech wizard. The night I signed nothing because paperwork can wait. And the sound of that office lock clicking shut behind me. At first, I wanted to disappear. I shut off my phone, logged out of everything. I didn't want pity. Didn't want anyone to know I had been played like a fool, used, discarded, humiliated. But then, a memory hit me. A small one. From years ago. I was maybe 10. My father had planted an entire field with a new kind of seed, a hybrid rice he had been told would change his yield forever. He put everything into that crop. But when the season came, a flood washed it all away. Everything. Gone in one night. I remember sitting beside him in ankle-deep water, crying, but he wasn't. He just picked up the broken hoe and said, Ket Dobgea, Beta. Par Hath Abi by Com Card Hain. That one sentence pulled me back from the edge. I wasn't done. Not even close. Yes, they stole my platform, my work, my idea. But they didn't steal me. I was still Armin. I still had my mind, my skill, my fire. And they had made one fatal mistake. They thought I'd stay quiet. I started from scratch. Again. I went back to my old notebooks, my first sketches, my whiteboard diagrams from that cramped hostel room in college. I dug out the original Christianette code I had backed up on an external drive, thankfully offline. And most importantly, I opened a folder labeled Legal Draft. Inside it, a 3-year-old scanned document. A page my father had begged me to fill when I first started, a provisional patent application. Back then, I couldn't even afford a full patent. But I had gone to a small-time legal advisor in my district who helped me file a basic provisional claim of my concept and algorithms, just in case. It wasn't official protection. Yet. But it was time-stamped. Government sealed. It had my name on it. My concept. My creation. That document was now my sword. But before battle, I needed armor. I started working double, not just rebuilding the platform, but gathering evidence. Screenshots, emails, version history from my backup drive, drafts of the UI from months before Sahir and Zoya came on board. Even the original pitch deck, I had sent them over email. Every detail mattered. And then I did something I'd never done before. I got help. I reached out to a mentor from my college, Professor Rana, a man who had once told me, "Don't be afraid to make noise when they try to silence you." I told him everything. Showed him the documents, the code, the proof. He didn't say much. Just looked me in the eye and said, "Do you want revenge, Armin? Or do you want justice?" I said, "Both." He smiled. Good. Because one fuels the other. He connected me with a lawyer, someone who handled tech, IP, and startup disputes. I could barely afford the consultation, but the moment she saw my files, she paused and said, "You have a case. A big one." For the next 4 months, I worked silently, building, documenting, planning. Meanwhile, Sahir and Zoya's startup Agronova exploded. They were featured in Forbes India, won a tech award, even shook hands with government officials for a rural digital infrastructure deal. Every week, I saw their grinning faces on my feed, speaking words I had once written, pitching models I had designed, taking bows on a stage I had built. But I didn't react. I didn't tweet. I didn't text. Because I was waiting. And then, the moment came. A leaked photo. Sahir, on stage, holding a slide presentation with a flowchart that was almost an exact replica of mine, the one I had printed in that hostel, pinned to the wall above my bed. That was the final nail. My lawyer said, "We're ready." But before I filed the lawsuit, I did one thing first. I visited my village. I hadn't been home in almost a year. My father's hair was grayer, his walk slower. But when he saw me, he didn't ask about the startup, the betrayal, the silence. He just held my shoulder and said, "Zinda ho, bas ye coffee hai. Baki sab ho jayega." I showed him the app I had rebuilt, the new version of Christianet. He smiled, proud, like nothing had ever been taken. That night, I sat outside under the stars and made a promise to myself. I would not let betrayal define me. I would let my comeback do that. I had always believed that the best revenge is success. But after what they did to me, I realized success isn't enough. They needed to lose. And they needed to know why they lost. We filed the lawsuit on a Monday. A full 87-page intellectual property and breach of trust case, filed under the Indian Patent Office and the High Court of Maharashtra. My name was on the complaint. So was Sahir's and Zoya's. Every claim was backed with undeniable proof. My time-stamped provisional patent, source code backups, original UI drafts, WhatsApp conversations, emails, even voice recordings from pitch meetings where I had explained my proprietary algorithm. But I didn't stop there. Because while the legal system takes its time, I had another move to make. I had built a newer version of Christianet, sleeker, faster, smarter. This time, I didn't need flashy branding. I needed impact. With Professor Rana's help, I reached out directly to the Ministry of Agriculture through a former student now working on their Digital India project. I requested a 15-minute demo. They gave me 5. I showed them the platform, how it could analyze rainfall data and automatically suggest optimal pricing to farmers, how it bypassed mandi fees, how it worked offline in rural zones, how even a 60-year-old could use it with voice navigation. By the end of the demo, the officer said just one word: brilliant. The ministry offered to include me in a new pilot program for rural tech enablement. But I had one condition. The platform must run under its original name, Christianet, and the government must officially recognize me as its founder and architect. They agreed. While Sahir and Zoya were busy posting on LinkedIn about their new investor meet in Singapore, I was quietly spreading Christianet across 5 states through direct farmer networks, NGOs, and local cooperatives. I didn't run ad campaigns. I let word of mouth do the work. And soon, it did. Farmers began switching from Agronova to Christianet. Why? Because Agronova was designed for profit. Christianet was built for people. A month later, I made my first public appearance. It wasn't at a conference. It was at a press event held by the government, announcing a partnership with an innovative homegrown agri-tech solution developed by a rural engineer from Maharashtra. My name was on the banner. The cameras flashed. The press leaned in. I stepped up to the mic. And I said, loud and clear, I built this platform 3 years ago and had it stolen from me. But I'm not here to talk about betrayal. I'm here to show that when you build with purpose, not just profit, truth finds its way back. It went viral overnight. The next day, Sahir called me. I stared at the screen as his name flashed. For a moment, I didn't recognize the number. He had never tried to contact me after vanishing. But now? Now he needed me. I answered. Silence. Then, Armin, we should talk. I laughed. Now you remember my name? Look, this lawsuit. It's bad for all of us. Let's settle, man. I'll give you equity, public credit, hell, even a payout. I cut him off. You don't get to buy your way out of this. I'm not looking for credit. I'm here to end you. And I hung up. Then came court day. Zoya walked in first, dressed in all white, trying to play innocent. Sahir followed, visibly shaken. Their lawyers stood confident. Until we presented our evidence. Slide after slide. Screenshot after screenshot. Then the clincher, a live demo of Christianet's backend code, still intact, showing development logs from before Agronova ever existed. The judge stared at them. You presented this work as your own? He asked. Sahir tried to blame it on miscommunication. Zoya claimed she didn't know how deep Armin's contribution was. Their excuses were weak, desperate, transparent. The judge didn't even need the full trial. He ordered a cease and desist against Agranova, freezing their accounts, and demanded that all government partnerships be immediately terminated pending the outcome. Then he turned to me. You may proceed with full rights over the IP, pending final patent approval. This court recognizes Armin Ali as the rightful creator and owner of the Christianet platform. I didn't smile. I didn't even blink. I just looked at Sahir. And then Zoya. And I said, you erased me from the company. Now watch me erase your company from the world. And I did. Within 2 weeks, all major investors pulled out of Agranova. Sahir's firm blacklisted him. Zoya's agency collapsed after sponsors and clients cut ties due to the scandal. Their social accounts were bombarded with rage from the farming community. The story had spread. Not just mine, our story. Of the rural boy who got betrayed. And then built something bigger. But I wasn't done. Because I had one more surprise left. After the court ruling, things changed quickly. My inbox overflowed with interview requests. Investment firms wanted to fund the real Christianet. My LinkedIn doubled in followers every week. People were calling me a hero, the underdog who beat the system. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. Because deep down, I still remembered how it all began. With trust. With friendship. With hope. And now? All that was ashes. A month later, I was invited to speak at the Indian Tech Leaders Summit, the same event where Sahir and Zoya had once stood on stage and claimed credit for my work. This time, the invite had only one name, mine. When I stepped onto that stage, dressed in the same style of simple white kurta I wore the day I pitched Christianet for the first time, the crowd erupted in applause. I raised my hand, calmed them, and said, I didn't come here for applause. I came here to remind you, never underestimate quiet builders. Because the world forgets them, until they return with fire. Standing ovation. But that wasn't the end. 2 days later, I got an unexpected letter. Not an email. A handwritten letter. From Zoya. I stared at the envelope for 5 minutes before opening it. Armin, you don't have to read this. Maybe you've already moved on. But I couldn't. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know something. Something you probably never guessed. It wasn't Sahir's idea to steal Christianet. It was mine. He wanted to include you. He really did. But I convinced him you'd slow us down. I told him no investor would trust a small-town coder without English-Polish. I said you were the talent, not the face. He listened. And I pushed harder. I spun every PR story. I deleted your name from press decks. I was the one who had the access changed. Sahir didn't even know until the very end. I took what wasn't mine. Because I didn't believe you'd make it without us. And then you did. Without us. I watched it happen. And I realized. You weren't the one who needed us. We were the ones who needed you. I've left the city. I don't know what comes next. But I hope, someday, you find peace. I hope I do too. Zoya. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt. But because I had already mourned that friendship. A long time ago. That night, I opened an old file on my laptop. A folder titled Original Photos. It had just 3 pictures. Me, Sahir, and Zoya in college, arms around each other, laughing. The first whiteboard diagram of Christianet. A photo my father had taken, me sitting cross-legged on the floor, working, eyes full of fire. I stared at that last one for a long time. And then I did something unexpected. I posted it online. Captioned it simply. They thought I needed their light. But all I needed was my own fire. Within hours, it went viral. But I didn't log in to see the reactions. I had packed my bags. I was heading back to my village. 1 week later, I stood in the middle of a crowded Mandi. But it wasn't chaos anymore. There were booths with QR scanners, voice prompts in Marathi and Hindi, a Christianette help desk with two young boys teaching an old farmer how to check market rates. And in the distance, my father, watching, smiling, not because his son had become famous, but because he saw something in my eyes he hadn't seen in years. Peace. As I stood there, I realized revenge is powerful, but purpose lasts.